Welcome all. Welcome back. Good morning. I hope you guys got a little bit of a break after our pretty riveting opening panel discussion. I'm really excited to see you guys here for our Culture of Data Skills session. My name is Anne. I am one of the chairs for the Culture of Data Committee, and we work to organize this conference. And my co-chair, Ben, is also here joining me. We are going to continue our dynamic morning with our skills session speaker, Dr. Adam Bickford. He is the outreach coordinator at the Colorado State Demography Office. And his presentation today is going to provide an overview of the demographic and survey data that's available at the Colorado State Demography website, but also describe a methodology for developing and communicating more transparent program results. I'm now going to warmly welcome our speaker, Dr. Adam Bickford. Dr. Bickford, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Anne. I appreciate it. Can you all see me? I hope so. Okay, cool. Um, Thank you. And we're going to begin as data heads everywhere know with a short poll. We're going to ask you to describe your job in 5 or fewer words, and then we'll get started. So, Madison, if you could please bring that up.
I just want to make sure that is working, right?
Yep, I got
Yeah.
it. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
So while this is going on and you guys are typing away, we want to talk a little bit at a very, very high level of abstraction, especially compared to this morning's session, about what data is and how the data that our office provides, how it's available, what data geographies we're working with, and then talk a little bit about some ideas about the process, social process of creating data. And then we'll have an opportunity to get some questions. Madison, how are we doing? How many responses do we
About
have?
40, 47, 48, 49.
Okay, so please continue with this, and we're at about halfway, so we can get started. So when we talk about what data is, it's important that we put this in the right context. This data, as opposed to just information or people's life stories, is the product of an organization's operations. For some folks like us, it's the main focus. But for other organizations, it's not so much. If you're providing services, your organization may be focused on providing the services, and collecting records about how there's what's being provided can be secondary. But data is also an abstraction. We have to standardize the information that we extract from personal experience and standardize things so we can summarize them. Often we count them, but in other cases, you're producing a more general summary of individual stories or whatever. In that process, some details are lost, but others are revealed. And deciding which details are kept and which are ignored is a key part of this standardization process that relies entirely on the context that you're working in. You know, it's important that we understand that data is created. It just doesn't exist. It doesn't exist out there in the world. We have to go through a process deciding about what is important to measure, what is important to collect, who do you collect it from, how do you take the information that you collect and you translate it into the intended measurements, how you compare. This is a big question that a lot of folks find themselves not really taking a lot of time to think about, because everything, that we, every narrative that we produce, it has to make some sort of comparison, whether it is, one group who gets a treatment versus another group that doesn't, or whether it is one service, group that is receiving services in one way or another way, et cetera. And then how do you document all this stuff? These decisions rely upon consensus. And within an organization and between an organization, often including the stakeholders and the people that you collect data from. And in the best case, these decisions are documented, which leads us to my favorite data acronym, RTFM. Read the friendly manual. It's really important because a lot of the information that we need to use is written down, and it gives you the ability, by understanding what is written down, how data collection is described, it gives you the ability to proceed with a particular project. Now, I want to talk about our website. I'm going to go off to the website right now. Um, We have a lot of information. We have basically all of the information that we produce and we work with, from both population estimates that our organization produces, SDO produces, and information from the Census Bureau is available on this website. These tables here are give really basic information at the county level, so you can select individual counties. I'm going to click on Clear Creek because that's where I am right now. And you can see that these tables update. You have tables here that are from State Demography Office population estimates. And we have also information from the American Community Survey over here. These links will take you to, just to check. Can you see this, Madison? You see county year of age by lookup? Okay. It'll take you to some of these applications that allow you to output really specific data selections for specific counties and specific years, both estimates and forecasts, that you can then come on. There. Okay, one more. My bad. There. That you can then download by clicking on this button. Generally, all of our applications give you the ability to select out particular geographies and particular years, and then you can download things so that you can incorporate them into other analysis tools that you want to create and use. We have data resources organized along this menu here by topic and by geography. When we look at different topics, we will see a list of visualizations of different sorts, which also give you the ability to look in depth at particular outcomes, and then download information that you can then use for further work. Additionally, to these visualizations, we have information for people who need to have an entire series of data. For example, population estimates going back to 2010 to 2024 for every county. You can download this spreadsheet and you can work with it that way. Also, we have these lookup applications, very similar to what I just showed you, at the county level and at the state and region level, and then for municipalities. So all this information is always available to you. It is always the current vintage. In this case, it's 2024 vintage. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means in a second. The last bit of our website I want to talk about right here, right now, is information from the Census Bureau, uh, the decennial census, and also the American Community Survey. Really important here are these entries right here, which are the manuals that we talked about. We will return to this in a second, but you have a lot of visualizations there. You also have census maps and spreadsheets from the decennial census and then from the American Community Survey. And here is a list of quite a few spreadsheets for counties and municipalities for a range of different topics, from race and ethnicity to ancestry to housing, household income, poverty, language spoken at home, work, and disability. So you can get all of this information together. And if this is as clear as mud, you can click on this button and it will send us a question. And we do our best to try to get these questions answered as soon as we can. So we're always here to be able to get information to you to help you figure out where what information is available and give you some assistance in using it. So I'm going to go back here. This was really quick. This is just a list again of some of the applications that we have available to you. Now, one thing I want to talk about, and this gets a little bit into the weeds, but we talked about a data vintage. So the data that we generate is a series of estimates at different geographies, typically at the county level and the state level, and then for some, we have information down to the municipality level. This is demographic data. It focuses really on three different series: birth, deaths, and net migration. These estimates are updated annually. And each time a data is updated, we update counts from the last census year, which was 2020, to the current vintage year, which is 2024. Everything prior to 2020 is not updated. But this information is based on data that we get from CDPHE for births and deaths. So for 2024, we have the actual number of births and deaths by county from CDPHE. And then for forecasts, we base them on age-specific birth and death rates. So I'm going to focus on birth because it's kind of easier. So the likelihood that a woman of a given age will have born a child in that year. Whether or not they actually do is just the rate. And that information informs the entire series of forecasts. Then we're getting ready to start the 2025 vintage, and that information uses the actual counts of births and deaths for 2025 and additional information about migration from the Census Bureau. And we go back to 2020 and we update all of those estimates. And then we recalculate the age-specific birth and death rates and apply them to the forecast from 2026 to 2060. So this is important because you cannot really compare different vintages to each other. We will have, occasionally we will get questions from someone who says, well, for Clear Creek County, we had numbers that we collected and downloaded from 2023 using the 2022 vintage, And now when we download data for 2024 using the 2024 vintage, they're different. What's wrong? And the reason that they're different is because we are always updating this information. And when you look at this information, you have to understand that you can only use the most current vintage, and that's the vintage that's available. So as you're working with this, understand that this is sort of the updating that is going on. It goes on continuously, and we talk about this every year at the State Demography Summit, uh, where we introduce our current vintage estimates and forecasts. And, it's important that people understand this. So that's State Demography Office data. The rest of our data comes from the Census Bureau. And the census and the ACS are derived from an enumeration of housing units. Okay, these are, places where people live, whether or not the housing unit is occupied at the time of the measurement. The decennial census is specified in our Constitution. It's a once a decade enumeration of all housing units as of April 1st in a year ending in 2020. It provides real basic data series that's used primarily for political redistricting. It's information by age, by sex, and by race. The age and the race variables are important to identify the voting age population and also to look at issues that were introduced with the passage of the Voting Rights Act. That information is also used by the Census Bureau to create population estimates and forecasts. And that's the use of the decennial census data. The other part of this, the tools that the Census Bureau provides, is the American Community Survey. And this is a continuous sample of housing units. It's a sample of each year. They sample about 3.5 million housing units nationwide. It provides data about a wide variety of social characteristics, income, language spoken at home, housing characteristics, all sorts of things. This data is given to us in the form of tables at different levels of geography. This is the census layout of geography, that there are key geographies that are called on the spine, where each level of geography is fully nested within another geography. So you have counties and tracts and block group and census blocks. But a lot of important geographies, like municipalities and zip codes, are kind of off spine. For example, zip codes cross state lines. Municipalities cross county lines. So when we start to work with, and then the last point is that a lot of geographies that we get asked about aren't included at all, like neighborhoods, areas within a municipality. This becomes important when we talk to folks who look at data when they're serving two counties and a slice of a third county. We will work with you to help identify that slice of the third county so that you have a reasonable geography that you can use when you're doing additional work. But understand that everything that we get is a pre-assembled table tabulated by the Census Bureau. So I mentioned this about the American Community Survey. We have a lot of resources for using the American Community Survey. You can see our webinars here on our web page. We hope that they're helpful. The worst part of it is you have to listen to me, but that's the way it goes. and then we compile multiple data series for counties and places for each 5-year data release. So the Census Bureau outputs 2 data sets every year. A 1-year data set, which is a single year period estimate for geographies with 65,000 or more residents, and then a 5-year data set for all geographies down to the census block group. In Colorado, about 92% of counties and municipalities have fewer than 65,000 residents. So basically, for most of our analyses, we have to use the 5-year data. These data are supplemented by a public use microdata sample data set, and data releases are lagged by at least a year. So the last release for the American Community Survey is the 2024 ACS. Its release started in 2025, and then it continued until 2026 because of the government shutdown. In most cases, both data sets are released in in a single calendar year. The 5-year data becomes available in December generally, and we usually have things up on our website in January. So just to compare really what the differences between these two data sets are. This diagram shows, you have for the 1-year data, you have 1-year survey receipts. Then they go through a cleaning and weighting and tabulation process, and then we get the tables. For the 5-year data, they go through the same process, but instead of just having 1 year at the beginning, they have 5 years together. And what that produces is a 5-year period estimate. Now that can be a problem for some folks who want to be able to say, look at poverty rates on an annual basis. You can't really do that for most of the locations in the state. You can do it for the state as a whole. You can do it for places like, Denver City and Colorado Springs. But like, as I mentioned before, for most of the locations and geographies in the state, you have to rely upon the 5-year data. Come on. There we go. So now, RTFM. These are some of the most important documents, from really the most general to really something very, very specific. I encourage everyone to look at the ACS table shells to understand what questions and what tabulations are available. This is a long list of all the tables that are published by the Census Bureau. It shows the contents of each table. The second most important document here is the subject definitions, which describes how particular things are defined. For example, how language spoken at home is defined, how disability is defined. And, it helps to understand how a question is asked so that you're making sure that you have a consistent and accurate sense of what it is being measured. Then there are the ACS handbooks, which is a document that describes analysis methods. These are really great, well-documented discussions that provide well worked out examples that you can use in your work. The downside is that there are about 15 or 20 versions of this document. The one that I encourage folks to look at is understanding and using ACS data, what all data users need to know. And that's available on the census website. And then for those who have to do a real deep dive, there's the ACS design and methodology report. So I'm going to switch gears here. Um, it's the process of data creation here. Understanding one's data is really important for effective decision making. And we can't not we have to emphasize that data creation is a social process that, you know, goes through a process of gathering information from respondents and abstracting that data so things can be measured in a consistent manner. How you do that is a very important decision that folks this morning, talked about eloquently. How we did it here is we asked you to describe your job in 5 or fewer words. So Madison, if we could show that, please. Okay. Oh, can I see the answers?
Can you see the answers? I don't,
I guess not. Okay.
I can share screen. There's on my end, I can show there's an image with,
Okay.
do you want me to
So
do
do
that?
you want me to stop sharing for?
I can if yeah, I'm happy to share.
Okay. Oh, hang on. Okay, I'm stopping sharing. Go for it. Okay. So now,
I can,
you could just scroll down a little bit. Awesome. Thank you.
you want me to hover over and we
That
can,
I want you to go down a little bit more, please. So that's fine right there. So now, if we were to take all this information that you all provided, and we did ask for 5 words as a way of just highlighting that in many survey situations, you don't collect someone's entire work history or their entire, in this case, or a complete story, their complete story, unless you decide that it's necessary to have their complete story. But here, what we would have to do is figure out a way of taking this limited description that we asked for and standardizing them so as that we can count up the number of analysts and the number of community partners and the number of folks who are, say, managers or supervisors or what have you. That is the key part of this whole process, is going through the data that you have and coming up with standardized measures that everyone in the process agrees upon. Thank you. If we can, start sharing again, please. Thank you very much. Okay. So thank you all. So, these steps rely upon the decision your organization or team makes. And it's very important, it's essential, really, to develop a consensus among stakeholders, participants, and analysts. And this can be difficult because a lot of the concepts are ambiguous. A very short story. Early in my career, I was an educational evaluator, and it was during a time when the phrase cultural capital was really, people were very excited about, how cultural capital leads to educational success. And when we tried to figure out what exactly cultural capital was, it was a terrible, involved discussion that never really came to a satisfactory conclusion. This process is standard. It happens really in all the time, all the steps that you have to go through as you're developing information about what you need to know, who you need to collect it from, how you're going to get from the information that you've collected to measures that you need to either meet a funder's requirements or to give you the ability to compare two organizations or two groups of folks. And then finally, what does the final product look like? We had a discussion about dashboards earlier here. What is better? Having a dashboard, having a report, and making those decisions and coming up with consensus about those decisions helps to guide all of the work that you need to do next. Once you are developing this consensus, it's very important that you document it. This is the WTFM process as opposed to the RTFM process. And this is often ignored, but it's really one of the most important steps. It gives you an idea about how your work is progressing, what kinds of concepts you've nailed down and you've reached some consensus about, and what information you need to develop. It provides information to stakeholders. It provides, even, and in the stakeholders, I would actually include the people that you're asking to provide the data for. But, but their role depends on the particular circumstance. And then most importantly, it provides historical background for when you need to repeat the analysis or when somebody else has to conduct the analysis. These details turn out to be more important than many people originally uh, presume and surmise. But being able to keep the information that you have decided upon stable throughout the process, isn't really important for you, for being successful in the analysis. So the next to last slide here, how census data and your data relate. We're demographers, okay? Demographers use big data at high levels of aggregation and long, data series. What we provide are really general descriptive data, and it's useful for describing large conditions and characteristics, but it may not be helpful for your specific project. If you have to describe particular outcomes and operations that are relevant to individual, particular subgroups, we used the euphemism earlier today, the community, and we may not be able to exactly inform those those measurements in your decisions. We provide background and context. We can talk about general trends, but generally demographic data is often too aggregated for program applications. And really, it's hard to attribute demographic changes to any single cause. We get a lot of questions about migration recently. Pardon me. We can show, net migration. We can show the number of people moving, but why people move is well beyond our ability to document. But it may be something that in a population that you're working with, a group that you're working with, it can be something that you can decide to collect and try to get information about. It always depends, you know. So that's kind of one of my last points here before we go off to questions. Our job at the State Demography Office is to help facilitate your data, your analysis and your work by providing demographic data. We try to help people develop skills and comfort in doing this analysis themselves. And only occasionally do we actually do the analysis for other folks. But we try instead to engage with you to help you understand what you need and get the information that will help you out. So I think we have a couple minutes here. I want to say thank you very much for your attention and your time, and I'm really excited to hear what questions you all might have. Thanks again.
Thank you, Dr. Bickford. We can now open up the Q&A time. So if you feel comfortable, please unmute and ask the question, or you're welcome to put it in the chat. And I have many questions, admittedly. I do want to ask like a selfish one. And you alluded to, Dr. Bickford, the recent federal shutdown. And I've also heard, and it could be rumors, that there's data that may or may not be collected anymore through specific federal channels. And so I'm wondering how this impacts the State Demography Office and in turn then impacts the rest of us who use a lot of the data that you
Mhm.
produce.
This is a real issue that unfortunately the answer is it depends. Okay. There's a lot of information that is not being collected now for all of the problematic political issues that we're all very, very much aware of. The and on the positive side, that there are many alternative organizations that are trying to backstop a lot of that data. For the work that the State Demography Office does, first of all, most of our authority to collect data or to process data is specified in state statute. And the Census Bureau itself is legally bound to provide this information to us. But this is 10,000-foot data about very, very basic demographic components. For program outcomes, there are a lot of different issues. We were talking about earlier, Enrique was talking about the difficulty of getting information about detailed migration statistics. That is a data source that we have heard exists, but we have never been able to get access to because of the organization of the federal data, so data infrastructure. How this goes forward, all I can really say is that it's going to be different than what it is now. And it really requires everyone to be involved with these other organizations and to keep up to speed and about what is going on and what is being collected and what isn't. I
Thank
know
you.
it's not.
It's okay. We have a question in the chat that I'll read from Katie. Can you speak to using these sources and denominators for calculating metrics like rates? It seems like the ACS manual recommends against using this and similar data for counts, suggesting it's mostly meant for monitoring trends in population characteristic estimates. But then they note that if you use
Yes.
it as a denominator to take into account margins of error, so it feels like a mixed message. In practice, I feel like ACS estimates are used more because they're more current than the decennial census. Is there a general recommendation that you have?
Yes. You should not use ACS estimates to calculate rates. You should use population estimates to calculate rates. The State Demography Office provides them every year for every county and also for every municipality. You can use those and to calculate things. You can also, in the spreadsheets that I talked about, the ACS spreadsheets I talked about, we provide percentages based on the ACS counts, which are the weighted counts of survey responses. And you can apply those to the population estimates with the caveat that the ACS variables have imprecision built into them because of the sampling. And you can find out more about that taking a look at one of our website, our webinars where we talk about this in great detail. And that, the periods may be different because depending on the geography that you're working with, you may have to use the ACS 5-year data table to look at a 1-year population estimate. So those are things that um, those are caveats that exist. If you have questions about this, please contact us. We're always available to help you work through these situations. And depending on the circumstances, we may be able to help you get a better, well-defined population estimate that you can use. But always, I should just add this to my bio. It depends. Um, but we're here to engage with you to help you get what you need.
You sound like a true economist.
Oh no, take that back. Now, come on. I'm a
Uh,
sociologist and not an economist.
So I really appreciated, and please put your questions into the chat. We have a few minutes left. I appreciated, Dr. McFerry, you talking about documentation, documenting like how you are going to, when collecting data, like how you're going to standardize it in essence. And a lot of us do use the demographic data that comes from the State Demography Office, but there are certain pieces, as you've suggested, that are not available, right? If we're looking for more for programmatic applications, or in my case, often looking for data that's related to like the social determinants of health. And I'm wondering, how do you coach people or the technical assistance that you give individuals from counties or other organizations that like, how do they think about the standardization? How do they incorporate community involvement in these decisions when thinking about something like social and community connections, which seems very vague and very ambiguous?
Well, first of all, we participate in forums like this, and you know, we have to really understand the social process that creates data. And I don't want to say have to get used to, but account for the ambiguity here. When we will talk to folks about what they need, we will often have to have a very long conversation about what their assumptions are and what they think, how they think really their part of the world works. Frequently, we have to act as if we are as sociologists collecting open-ended responses to get a narrative that gives us something that we can work with. Um, I kind of think, I know from my experience as an evaluator, that is a necessary thing to have to go through. And it helps to have these things so well defined that you can answer my question, what exactly are you measuring here? And that's part of the work that you all do, and I hope that you continue to do. And it's really an essential aspect to speak to some of the concerns that folks talked about this morning, to address those, right? It's important to understand that those are decisions that you can make and encourage folks to make those decisions.
And I have a question, if you don't mind.
Mhm.
Please, please.
So Dr. Bickford, thank you so much for your presentation. Something that is kind of going around my neck of the woods is in light of not just, federal data sets that are being scrubbed or removed, but just as you point out, there's just kind of a general incompleteness to some of these data sets depending on your level of granularity or geography. And so I'll use an example. The USDA Household Food Security Survey module is going to be discontinued, or it has been. And as community-based organizations, as local public health agencies, we are trying to figure out what level of infrastructure can we kind of prop up in the meantime. Assuming this comes back one day, maybe it won't. And I think that what I'm finding is we're having a lot of parallel conversations, but we aren't really all that coordinated across the state as to who needs this data, who has an incentive to maybe recreate this data set, um, or who might be able to even model that. If we can't, obviously we don't have the resources of the USDA. So in this moment where we're trying to patch things together or fill in the gaps, do you have any recommendations on how folks should coordinate to stay abreast of what's being created? How are folks creating new data sets or
Mhm.
organizing? And how might the State Demographer's Office or other state agencies kind of help coordinate and point people in the right direction so that we're not duplicating those efforts?
Well, that's a very great question, a very important thing to consider. Um, there are organizations that are attempting to backfill this information and, to coordinate. And of course, I'm blanking on the names of them, but there are, you know, different clearinghouses. The State Demography Office is not going to be the place to get hook up with that community just because of our statutory limitations. Okay. Um, but that doesn't mean that can't go searching. How do I, what's happening with the USDA, food security data, and to start trying to hook up with these individual organizations. It's become very clear that everything that we're working with is becoming political, and the remedy for politics is activism. Um, so, and that is the challenge that we all face, is figuring out what's appropriate, figuring out what's going to be effective, and then building a specific community around that. You know, and that's it's not particularly concrete, but those are the things that I would start with. You know, there was one question that I want to answer about the upcoming census test. The census test was originally proposed to go to 6 locations, including Colorado Springs, to test out data collection methodologies for non-standard housing units. That has been stopped primarily because of budgetary um, considerations. And now they're focusing on 2 locations, Huntsville, Alabama, and I'm blanking on the other one, but in the South. It will be interesting to see how that comes out, how that works. It is always an interesting time when we're preparing for the decennial census, and there are folks who will always imagine the worst until it isn't. We really can't make a lot of predictions about how this is going to impact, counts. But we will, as a state, start a period of informational activities and working with local communities to help get census awareness out and to help with data, help encourage folks to submit the 2030 census um, forms. That's coming. We're still 2026. Things will start happening next year. So please, if you're interested in this, sign up for our newsletter. The link to do that is on our homepage under a section called Publications. You'll find a link, and that's where we're going to produce send out all the information that we have about our plans to support the 2030 data collection.
That actually works perfectly. Rita, I just want to make sure that Dr. Bickford answered your question that you put in the chat. Just so all of you are aware, Rita had asked about the U.S. Census dropping Colorado Springs from its list of cities it was going to survey for 2030 related to group quarters.
Right.
So yeah, she was wondering what could be, is there anything DOLA can do to maybe still survey group quarters in Colorado Springs?
No.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but we don't have the resources. We don't have um, the ability to do this. Part of the group quarters that people were talking about are educational institutions, dormitories. Um, During 2020, the pandemic hit right at the very beginning of data collection for the 2020 census, and that impacted a lot of this information collection because universities closed and people left dormitories to go back home. So instead of being counted in their dormitory, they were counted at their home if they were counted at all. We're not anticipating another pandemic. It's not on our schedule at all, but we hope we won't have the same sorts of issues for 2030. I guess I have to underscore that even if DOLA were able to collect this information, there would be no way that we would be able to get it into the hands of the federal government. So, and we don't have the legal authorization to do that. Although we always joke about this, when we start the Colorado community survey, maybe we'll be able to deal with that. And if you happen to have $10 million sitting around for the next 20 years, please give us a call and we'll work with you to get this going.
I like that, especially when I get when I win the lottery, right? So,
Well, you're going to have to, yeah, and so just, send us an email when that happens and we'll start working on that.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Bickford. We are going to wrap this session up. I just have a few announcements. Thank you so everyone for attending this session and for engaging in the Q&A. Thank you, Dr. Bickford, for an engaging presentation. And in the icons, if you could just show your appreciation for his presentation, whether it's like hearts, claps, whatever it might be. Thank you. A few additional things. Madison, who is part of CPHA, will be in this main Zoom room after this presentation and during lunch, which is what we're going to be heading into. If you're experiencing any technical issues or if you have any questions, she will be available here. Don't forget that we will be pushing out an evaluation starting tomorrow. Please fill that out. It is super critical for our planning committee. And I think that there's an incentive. I believe, Ben, that we are going to do a giveaway of one or maybe more registrations to the 2027 Culture of Data Conference. I hope that that's a huge incentive for you guys, right? And now we're going to have an hour long-ish, maybe more, lunch break. So please take some time, get some healthy food, go take a walk, whatever makes you feel better, because we know that we're going to be sitting down again at our computers and watching some more sessions. The next session that it begins our sort of session speakers starts at 12:30 p.m. and we look forward to seeing you all there. Take care and thank you all. Bye.